Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I'm your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sarah States and the real St. Paul. This is not a therapy session. You will not find mental health professionals here, nor are we a substitute for said people. We are just regular people sharing and trying to normalize our stories with mental health. I am so honored today to have a guest that is so close to my heart on the podcast, a man with a master's in hydrology and geology with a true passion for film. His writing has been published in everything from cool rocks to cool flicks, which makes sense for a cool guy. But most importantly, he is a person who means so much to me and has taught me even more than that. So without further ado, let's welcome one of the founding members of the Best Friend Brothers, my brother, Team, or as you guys would probably call him, Tim.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I should come on your podcast more often because I have not heard that much praise from you in a long time. So it feels good to know that you still think these things about me.
Oh shit! Absolutely, you know for sure that I do. There's no question in your mind.
It is just nice to hear that affirmation out loud.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll make sure to send you a couple more messages.
Yeah, and I know like codependency has been something that came up, and for me, I kind of have that where I need the affirmation from people close to me and like to feel like useful. So thank you for saying all those things.
You just got it.
I did. Yeah.
All right, so we're just gonna jump right into it if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, obviously, any questions, just let me know. Happy to. I don't really have any boundaries per se that I think would be crossed. Like, I'm happy to talk about anything or like be open. I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe some questions later, but I think it's important to talk, and I'm really glad. And I just want to thank all three of you for having me on the show, and thank you for doing this and providing like a platform to vocalize like our feelings on this and talk about it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So, yeah, my story starts maybe like 6 or 7 years ago when I was in grad school. Like, I was feeling isolated. I just moved to a second new city in 2 years, and I didn't really know that many people, and I was kind of overwhelmed by the work of school, like balancing my thesis project with the classwork itself, and also like being a TA and stuff. And so this was like the first time that I really had like this high stress situation for a prolonged period of time. Like up to that point, I had stressful moments in my life or whatever, like, but it was never this combination of like independence, living on my own with these challenges of school and work. And then also that responsibility of like this project being, it was up to me basically when I graduated by finishing and progressing on this project. And stretched out over like a 2-year period of time, that was a lot of pressure that I think was overwhelming for me. And so in order to like get through the days, especially with the classwork and the thesis project, like I just started to completely lose any excitement for it. And I was just moving through the motions of each day, and everything just became a same routine that I was doing for no other reason other than like I felt like I had to. So I would get out of bed at like the last possible moment just so like I wasn't showing up late. I would go straight to class. I wouldn't really eat breakfast or do anything. I'd work all day. I wouldn't usually take breaks. Like maybe I'd go get a coffee or something, but I just wanted to like finish as fast as possible and move on. And then from there, I'd go like straight to the gym, like usually without having eaten anything or taken, maybe like a 5-10 minute break somewhere in there. And then I'd go home. I'd eat a lot for dinner because I hadn't eaten all day. And then I would work more. Maybe if I had time, I would watch TV or a movie, and then I'd go to sleep. And I'd sleep, I was probably getting like 8-9 hours a day, but I'd wake up every day just completely exhausted. Like no matter how much I slept, I was just so tired getting up in the morning. And I think that was definitely just like waking up to go to school again. I wasn't excited at all about it. And so I was just kind of like, for me, I just wanted to stay in bed. But then I was also like, oh, this is normal. Like I'm stressed out, I'm busy, but I have to do the work. Like this is, I guess, what working is, right? Like I made this commitment and I had to stick to it, and I wasn't going to fall behind, and I definitely wasn't going to quit. Like a commitment was a commitment. And I was never really stopping to even think if I was enjoying the work that I had like chosen to do, because like I had chosen this, so part of it was a little bit embarrassment about being like, you thought about this for a while, you made this decision for this program, like, did I make the wrong decision? But I didn't really want to consider that. And so I was never pausing to be like, this isn't fun for me, or like, not even fun, but like I was, truly just like, I have to get through this so I can finish it. And so I was trying not to complain about it. I'm sure like my mom will tell you that I called and complained a bunch about school and stuff, which I tend to do in stressful situations. But to me, I was like, I can't stop. Like I have to just keep going. And so I would just push through each day and being like, all right, once I graduate, like I'll get a job, I can move to another city where I want to be living, and it will change. But obviously, like it's not that easy. I found out later that like just moving and working like it fixed some things for like a short period of time, but this sort of just everything that had crept in during grad school was still there. And it really wasn't until like a year or two later that I realized, looking back, that something was wrong in grad school. Like, I remember working in New Jersey and like enjoying it. I was meeting people, I was having a good time, but I was watching something, and I specifically remember like laughing out loud really hard, to the point where I paused and was like, I haven't laughed like this in a long time. And so like I was like, oh, this it's good to feel this way again. Like great. So I was like, maybe I just wasn't watching anything that was funny, or like maybe the people that I was meeting weren't funny. That's not true. They are very funny, and I still enjoy it. But I was like, I had to pause and be like, oh wow, like it's been a long time. And so that kind of started to get me to think and be like, maybe there was something I was ignoring, that was affecting me, and sort of ignoring that depression and that kind of like hopelessness and just like apathy of each day of moving through the motions. So then I started to look back on some of my other habits and things that were happening in those previous few years. And I was, talking with therapists and stuff that were getting me to recognize that this form of sort of apathy and disassociation from emotion is a type of depression. And so, yeah, I there was that apathy for everyday work, which to me I just chalked up as stress. But then looking back on it, I was like, there were other things like isolation that were adding to it. I had to move halfway through school because my advisor got a new job at a better program, so it did work out well. But in order to continue that project, I moved with her. So I had like 9 months in one place and then 9 months in a different city. And so I only knew one other person when I moved. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to be graduating in like 9 months. So I don't really have time I want to just finish this work and get over it. So I wasn't making an effort necessarily to meet people and make connections. And at the same time too, I also didn't really feel like I fit in because these people were so excited about their projects, or at least they seemed to be. And I didn't feel like I was. And so I didn't feel like comfortable talking about that. And also, kind of being like, well, these people are so smart, like, and they know what they're doing. And like, I was kind of in this position. And so then I just kind of compounded that, instead of talking about it, to isolating myself. Like I would just go home after school, and on the weekends I wouldn't really make an effort to go see them. I would just be like, I have to do this work and I'll get over it and it will be fine. I didn't really have like the energy so to socialize, and that, I guess, was, looking back on it, was another just indication that I wasn't feeling great about myself. And so that kind of then bled even further. So like this apathy with school and like disassociation bled into those like lack of being able to create friendships. And then it also impacted my own relationships, not really with like family or set friends. Like I did feel re-energized every time I got to go home for like holidays or like a vacation. I was like, those were the things that I was looking forward to. But like with significant others, like my girlfriend and I broke up during this time, and it wasn't, at the time, it was something that was like, we were fighting and arguing. It was long distance too, so it became long distance, so it was tough. But it was like, in my head, I was like, oh, we just have misunderstandings, or like, I'm busy, I can't, be on the phone or flying down or doing these things. But really, I had just made myself emotionally unavailable, and I couldn't I didn't have like the vocabulary at that time to explain how I was feeling. I think that's something that's really difficult for a lot of people when they first start to feel down, is like actually putting words to it, besides like, I'm sad and I don't feel like doing this. And so that's only something recently I've been like trying to figure out, is like, how do I explain? And so that's why I'm really appreciated too. I think this podcast helps with that, of just like, no one really, you can say like, oh, I'm not feeling good or I'm sad, but it's really difficult to actually articulate to somebody why you are unavailable for a certain period of time, or like what space you need during that. Um, so all of this was just kind of like blending together. And to me, like, again, the stress with school didn't bother me because I thought that was just normal. Like nobody really likes their job or whatever. But then, and to me too, I was like, I was feeling kind of chill. I wasn't getting like super angry about anything. And like, I have a tendency to frustrate quickly, I guess. And during this period, I was like, I'm pretty relaxed. Like these things aren't bothering me. But it wasn't that necessarily. It was just that I was no longer even aware. Like I was just blocking out any sort of emotional connection. So I didn't care about it. It wasn't like I was relaxed or chill. Like I was just disassociating from these feelings at all, so that I wouldn't have to deal with any of the anger or like frustration. And then I think the biggest red flag, I guess, looking back and being like, oh, this was an issue and something was wrong, or like I just wasn't feeling, I was feeling depressed, or however you want to say it, was that like this apathy then kind of bled into my own desire for living in a way where I had become like so disconnected, where I no longer really cared if I was like living or dying. And I want to like be very clear that I never at any point wanted to like actively hurt myself or like die. Like that wasn't it. It was more of like a passive ideation to like, if I got in a car accident on my way to school or something, like then I wouldn't have to do it this day. And like that started to become a huge like relief, and like a habit where I would just like, anytime I was overly stressed, I'd be like, it would be so nice if I just didn't have to do this. And I didn't know any way out besides like, oh, if I just didn't exist, then my problems wouldn't exist. And so, yeah, it also was interesting because I think it's very interesting to think about death and stuff in like from a philosophical point of view. And so I started thinking about it like that too. Like, what does it mean when we die? And I think probably speaks to how I was feeling in general at the time, like came to this conclusion that nothing really happens and I would have no idea. So it's like all of a sudden I just don't exist. And if I'm not aware of my previous existence, then why would I care if I died? Because I'm not like sitting somewhere watching down and being like, obviously, like I'm aware of that some people would be very sad, but I wouldn't even know that. So it didn't matter. And so that kind of just, it is like a relieving feeling to think that way. Yeah. And so
I know what
I
you're
would,
saying.
yeah,
And sorry to interrupt, but I
no,
think
no.
Peaks, you too were saying in your episode, I believe, like a similar thing, like your apathy kind of like bled into this sort of like, I don't really care. Like it doesn't really matter to me living or dying. Like I feel like we talked about this once, or maybe I'm wrong and I'm making this all up, but I believe that you were talking about that. And I just wanted to
I
comment on that because like you two are brothers. So I just want to say like it's interesting to hear Tim talk about this now because I feel like you explained the same exact thing just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we definitely had a similar conversation. Mine was more so towards like the outside world.
Yeah.
I definitely care a little bit less about. I just like didn't care about the people around me and things like that. But I do feel like I've had these exact same kind of thoughts about death as well, where I'm like, you know what? Like, what is the difference between living? Like, there is really none. And I'm not
Right.
like it in a way. In the end, it's like slowly kind of for other people, right? You might look at it and like religion is something that helps them out. It's like, oh, after death, it's beautiful to see like our family going to other places. For me, it's just like, oh, it's beautiful to see like you no longer have to worry about everything that exists in life.
For sure.
Like you
Yeah.
Like I'm not in no way. And like for me, like I don't really look at death as like a end to anything, and or like a huge unhappy moment. It's gonna hurt for a little bit, but like I can get over it extremely quickly. I'm not sure if that is
Interesting.
has to do with my
Yeah,
apathy, but
I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a rationalization behind it. If you think about it that way, I used to think about it a lot more in terms of like it wouldn't matter because you wouldn't know. And like, yeah, and for other people, like I'm sad if someone close to me passes away. I think I feel it a lot in that initial stretch, but I don't often like look. I don't know, unless I haven't thankfully had like anything terribly tragic happen. It's been mostly like, elder relatives and stuff.
right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it would feel like if I had to cope with that. But it is, yeah, sort of like a relieving thing. And but I used to think of it more in that way, and now I'm trying to use that idea as more of like a motivating factor of like I don't know, but while I'm here, I am aware of what's happening, and so I'm trying to use it as like I only really get however long I'm here, so to use that as a way to like enjoy the time instead of being like I'm not like waiting for it to happen like I was in grad
Yeah.
school or something, being like,
It's like
yeah, this
helping you to value your
for
time
sure.
here more. Yeah. um,
I'm trying to use it that way. Like, yeah, in grad school, it was definitely like this would be such a relief. And I think now, I mean, I have periods of like stress and like frustration with what's going on in the world where I still think that sometimes, but it's not nearly as often. And now I do try to just be like, well, when it happens, it happens. Like I don't. It's not scary to me to think about at some point. Like I know a lot of people don't like to think about it at all, but I'm not like thinking about it often as I did back then to be like this is going to come and it's going to be relieving. So it has
mm.
changed, which I guess is like a sign of some progress in my mental health journey. But yeah,
I feel like there's
that was kind of like the last point I really wanted to make of like, so it was, yeah, that apathy that started with school and like work and just going through the motions of every day and not having any excitement that then bled into other relationships and like this self isolation and like I guess this isolation because I was moving and I didn't know anyone, but also then compounding that even more by telling myself like I wasn't connecting with these people or I have nothing to say, and then isolating myself even more. And then yeah, that bleeding into other relationships and then into like the way I considered my own life. All of that, looking back on it, was definitely like, and I still don't feel particularly comfortable about saying that I was depressed or I have depression, which is strange too. Like, I, it's more that I don't want to like diminish anybody else's feelings of depression. Like, I mostly feel okay, I think, but yeah, that was like a very difficult period, and I like have trained my brain in certain circumstances to go back to that now, which is the hardest part. Like, it was a defense mechanism at the time when like things weren't going well, and it still like is there to just be like nothing matters, who cares, like just turn it off because that's easier than like dealing with whatever other feelings. And that's something that I'm like practicing now, not doing, and instead like trying to be able to recognize these feelings and confront them, so that way I can also feel more happiness and excitement as well as like recognizing that yeah, it's going to be difficult. Um, I would say most of the time, but I know that that's not particularly true. That's just more of like the pessimism that I kind of have as well. But yeah, this way of thinking is kind of uh, like had rewired my brain to think, and now I need to sort of rewire it backwards a little bit to avoid going into that like apathy and disassociation again,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a daily process. Like I have things that I'm doing now. Like I on the post I think I put up on the website, I talked a little bit about like starting meditation or keeping like a gratitude journal, um, and little things like this like are helpful, but I don't do a great job of doing them consistently enough. Like it's something I now turn to when like I'm having a particularly rough few days, but it needs to be something I think that I'm doing regularly, so that like the tough days come less often, or that like when it starts to happen, I already have these mechanisms like right on hand. It's not just like pull myself out of it and try this again. But yeah, I think it's always a process, right? Like I don't think this sort of way of thinking for me will ever go away. I know like it's always going to be back in my head, but it is something that I'm like at least now aware of, and now able to recognize and try to talk about it and figure
progress.
out. Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing is,
yeah.
I think you have made a lot of steps to progress. Overall, I think you care about you're very introspective in your mental health, which is definitely beneficial. But I do want to jump back into the story and kind of ask some questions on the story itself before we go into those solutions that you've kind of come up with, like that meditation.
That's good. Yeah, whatever your questions you guys have, feel free to ask.
So for me, I'm noticing like stress was seemingly the catalyst in it all, and like the starting of the mental health going underway. So I have two kind of questions involved in this. First one is, do you think like grad school stress, though you had stress in grad school, like we still have a decent amount of stress in lower education? Is it, you think you were just more intelligent to be like cognizant of it, or do you think there was just other things going on in your life that were better, or you just like were getting to the point where you were comparing to what everybody else in your school was doing? You're like, maybe like I didn't exactly, like you said, choose the right thing. So where did that stress kind of fully come from, and why was it so different than the stress earlier?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it wasn't necessarily like this. It was more work than I was used to, but I don't think that was the part that was like overtly stressful to me. I think what made it difficult was the realization that like maybe a year or so in, being like, I don't necessarily like what I have chosen to do. Like I picked a thesis project that was like heavy on computer modeling, because not because like I'd done that in undergrad. We had like one lab where we were like, let's use a computer model to see how groundwater moves. And I was like, that was kind of cool.
What?
But it was more that I was like, computer modeling is like a thing, like it's important. I was like, this will be a good skill for me to get a good job, right? Like if I have a thesis that was focused on this, like I will get hired because companies need this skill and it's relatively new. But then like realizing halfway through, I was like, but I don't like this or care about this really at all. Like there were aspects of geology that I really enjoyed. There was a reason why I went into it. And then that kind of like pigeonholed me when I was like applying to jobs too. Cause like companies would be like, we need someone who can do this. But I was like, and I hadn't been hired before and I needed money. I like in grad school, I wasn't making any money really. So I was like, I'll keep doing this. So I think it was more that stress of like feeling like I may have made the wrong decision combined with the added workload. Like, right, undergrad has its own stress, but to me, like I didn't feel sort of like the weight of responsibility in undergrad. I still felt like I'm gonna go to class and like it'll be
see
fine.
your friends later or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like there wasn't the grad program that I was in, like you don't take a ton of class. It's mostly reliant on finishing your project, and you don't really have a ton of help with that project besides your advisor, and maybe you collaborate with a couple other people, but it's mostly on you to finish. And so I wanted to finish as quickly as possible. So I put, I think, a lot of that stress on me instead of sort of, I maybe had a little bit more time to stretch it out, but so I think I did some of that to myself. But it was, definitely the combination of like the lack of interest and the slow realization that like you maybe picked the wrong career, and then the added stress of just like balancing all the additional work with teaching too and moving and all that stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
Where's that stress coming from? Like the pressure of like you finishing like super like fast.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me it was I kind of had always been taught before like growing up, that if you commit to something, then you have to finish it.
I don't recall being taught this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it started with me, and I think it maybe was something that was said to me like one time, and then it just stuck in my head because I played baseball growing up, at like, I mean, I guess like some travel. I'm not particularly good, but it was like a situation where I was like, I don't think I really like doing this anymore. And I wanted to like quit halfway through a season. And my parents were like, you can't quit. Like, you are on this team. And so I think that stuck in my head as like, you can't quit anything you decide to do. Like, because it was never like a high, they were not pressuring at all. It was just that like, I probably had like 5 games left in the season and they were like, just, you can't quit now. And so that just stuck in my head as like, and I've gotten away from that now, Paul. Like last February, I like quit my job finally because I was like, I don't like this field at all, and I need to find something. And so I like finally, after like, yeah, I guess I was in grad school 7 years ago, so it took me like 7 years to finally be like, this was the wrong choice that I made, but I got there.
So you're not studying rocks anymore?
No, only for fun now.
Yeah.
When I go on vacation, I can point to the formations and be like, this is limestone that's formed by a shallow sea from like 50,000 years ago. But
That's
so I still
amazing.
have like those skills in my pocket. But no, I'm not. Right now, I'm working for like a independent research company, just collecting some data while there aren't a lot of other full-time jobs open during COVID.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's I think like it comes with its own stressors now, but I've realized that like I do have more agency in the decisions that I make. And if I'm stuck in a situation that I'm not enjoying, I don't have to always be in that situation.
That's
It took you a long time to get to that point. It's interesting.
Yeah, because there was like a lot of guilt around like
feeling.
First of all, like, what am I going to do? Like, I have formal training in a very specific field. And also like I had, the jobs that I had were good. And it was like, okay, if I just work a little bit more, like I might get promoted and like maybe further in my career, I'll be happier. But then I moved to a larger company. I was initially working at a small place with like 7 people, and I kind of liked that small, like it was very collaborative. We all had to work on like every project. Then I moved to a much bigger company, and in my head, I was like, I'll work and then I'll one day be like a project manager in this environmental consulting. And then after working there for like a couple of years and seeing how the project managers worked, I was like, actually, this is definitely not what I want to do. And so I think that kind of was the push of being like, and I had very supportive like friends and partner at the time who was like, maybe this is just a decision you have to make and like try it out. So it did take me a while to get there, but I got there, and I'll figure it out. I'm still kind of trying to figure it out a little bit, but yeah, I think that's more like the excitement now. I'm trying not to. Sometimes you think about like the anxiety or like being nervous about like, will I get hired for a job that I have to kind of convince somebody more that I'm qualified than just like, here's what I went to school for and I have experience. Like, but it's more exciting than it is anything else for me right now. So
Good. Yeah, I can just see you in the outfield of your baseball games, like picking up little pebbles and rocks.
It's funny
in
because
the outfield.
It's funny because I think like growing up, I wasn't necessarily like that. We have there's a third brother, another best friend brother, and he was like the nature guy growing up. And there was a specific baseball game where he was in the outfield and he wasn't paying attention, and we were like trying to get his attention from the sideline to be like, "There's a guy at the plate. The ball might come to you," and we're like yelling his name, like Mark, Mark, and then he just like looks over and points at the sky. And he's like, hawk. He was just watching a hawk fly overhead. So he was like the nature guy growing up, and now he's like the athlete. I mean, but it's quite so. Yeah, I don't know. That's where that commitment came from, I guess. But.
Yeah, I wonder for all of this, like, it's not so much guilt or thinking that you made the wrong choice for a lot of it. How much pain, I guess, or issues came from looking at other people and comparing your situation to them? Is all these people come out of school together, and some people somehow, I'm still so confused at how they do it, pick exactly what they want before they even start college. Like, holy shit, I'm 5 years after college and I still have no clue what my true passion is. Like, there's people that figure this out immediately. Do you ever sit here and compare yourself to them? And if so, like, what does that cause issues for you?
That's a good question. I know, like, and you guys have talked a lot about like the anxiety and like the feelings of like being in groups or in situations and sort of seeing that outward projection. I don't necessarily struggle with that. I think um, that wasn't. I am like envious of people who like went to undergrad and are like, this is what I want to do, and I'm so happy doing it. Like, it would be nice to know, but I'm starting to realize, like, the more I talk to people and like read, that for most people, I don't think that is the case. That like they may be fine with what they picked and like can handle it better than I did, but I think most people still. I don't know that people are really expected or like have the capacity to know what you want to do for the entire, like, you're supposed to work for like what, 35, 40 years. Like, how are you supposed to know what's going to make you happy when you're like 23 or 24?
Yeah.
So I think it actually has been more helpful for me to like look around and actually ask people and be like, this is what I did. And I found a lot of friends and people be like, I did the same thing. And like, or I read this book called Range that was weirdly enough about a geologist who then is now like a writer and like a sports journalist. And I was like, well, and it was just all these little stories about how these people who ended up being successful later in life didn't get there until a lot longer, and like it took them trying a handful of different things to finally realize like where their skill sets match. So that was helpful. I mean, I'm still like anxious about it at times, but I don't like look at my friends who are successful or who have like found a career and be like, I wish I had that, or like, I don't. It doesn't make me feel worse about my situation necessarily.
Yeah. I think oftentimes if we can just recognize, like, we don't wish we had, a lot of times we don't wish we had that. Like, I have friends that are super successful, big time finance jobs. And like, for me, that's awesome. But I know for a fact that if I had to work 60 hours a week in something I didn't love, I would be far more unhappy than doing something I love for 30, 40 hours a week and just making a normal living.
Right.
Yeah. So as long as we get that like self introspection and realize that it's not the actual life they have that we want, but just like the individual little, maybe this vacation or this little thing that they got going for them that we're interested in, we start to realize that everybody's like that then.
Yeah. And that was a huge stumbling block for me to like finally quit my job. Like, Sarah, you said like, oh, that took a long time to like get to that point. It's like part of it was because like in your head, I mean, our parents grew up in a time where, yeah, you picked like a career, you worked, you got to retirement, and now you have your benefits. And I would call and like complain about my job and be like, everybody hates work. Like, people have bad days at work, whatever. And so there was this like idea in the back of my head that like I'm going to fall behind as like a 31-year-old who is now trying to find a new career. Like, but then I have to realize that like even if I switch careers, like whatever, all the skills and stuff I've learned are not like totally useless. And like I do need to keep that confidence and like my belief that I maybe have to live like a more like, yeah, I guess quote unquote normal or like smaller life. Like I can't take every trip if I'm, and I might have to start lower at a new company, which is like fine, because I hated what I was doing, and I will ultimately benefit from that, even if there are like a few years now where like I'm trying to figure that out. It comes with its own growing pains and like difficulties.
Yeah. I know sometimes I watch sports on TV and like all these athletes are like 18 to 20. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I used to be like, oh, these people are so old. Like, that's going to be me when I'm 20. And now I'm like older than that. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
they're
Sarah.
babies.
Now there are coaches who are my age,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what the. Like there's one guy who's like coaching at a very high level of soccer in Germany who's like 32, and I'm like, that's a year older. I was like, that guy looks younger than me. This is, yeah. But I think like it is tough not to compare yourself. But I think if you make choices, I think for your ultimate like success and like happiness down the road, as difficult as it can be at times, like you made that decision. Like I made this decision for a reason. It wasn't like something I just thought about for a month and then was like, I'm leaving this job. Like, and so I have to like keep confidence in that and be like, you will find something, or you will be happier in the end because of that decision.
Yeah. Optimism can go a long way for sure.
And Peaks, I'm not particularly the most optimistic person. So that's what I'm saying, like doing certain things throughout the day or just like reminding myself that this is a way to think too. It's an option to have a little bit of hope and like be optimistic.
Yeah.
And it's easier for me to say to you guys, like I'll probably later today be like, what am I doing with my life? I gotta get, but and then tomorrow I'll feel better. Like it does come in waves completely. Like I'll open Twitter and see something on the news and be like, why did I look again today? Like nothing good is happening. And then I will go into like a terrible spiral of like, we're screwed. Like this is never going to get better. And then I'll complain to my mom and she'll tell me like, okay, you can't just do this all the time. This is not a coping mechanism. And then I'll wake up the next day and be like, yeah, you're right. Like there is some hope too. So it definitely is a roller coaster.
I want you, I'm not trying to get political on this show at all. I want you to follow AOC on Instagram if you don't.
Oh my God. You just got political though.
No, I get it. She's just, I'm not for her politics, just for her mental health, just for her, like, the way she runs
just
it.
To watch her cook? I mean, I could watch her. I'll watch her cooking Instagram Live and then Florence Pugh cooking back to back, and that will be like my happy zone.
There you go. That's a perfect night. That's a perfect night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've done a pretty decent amount. Have we missed anything in the story you want to touch on really quick before we kind of go into our final question?
No, I think I've kind of hit all the major points there.
So this question is one that I have literally, absolutely no connection to. But I know
have too much experience with it.
And you might have too much experience. So I'm excited to hear everybody's kind of take on this. And I will obviously give mine from the opposite perspective. But what is the key to managing mental health in a relationship?
In a relationship, like what? In any relationship, or in
your like I guess intimate relationships.
Okay.
What is the key to manage? Yeah. What is the key to managing it? Is it a team? Is it a teamwork effort? Is it something that can push you back from relationships, or is it oftentimes something that can bring you together? Ooh.
Do you guys want to wait? Can I just say for a second that when I was having trouble with mental health in my personal relationship, I read a book called How to Love.
Oh.
And it really helped me.
I read a book called How to Come Alive Again, and I was like, this also helps me. So I thought you were going to say that as like, how to? I was like, oh, wow, did we read the same book when we were struggling with this? But
so what's the secret to mental health? How-to books.
Yeah, so just read a book and you'll know. I don't really know because I have not been successful yet with this. I think managing mental health in relationships has been an ongoing issue for me. But I think it starts with something that I kind of had mentioned before, is like learning the vocabulary of how to explain what you're going through or feeling. Like if you can't articulate to a partner or listen to them, maybe maybe they see it from the outside and like they're better with these things than you are, and like they can articulate your feelings back to you. It's about being able to like listen and understand and like actually be able to describe it and communicate that way, rather than just like kind of doing what I've done in the past, which is just kind of like shut down and kind of slowly move away. But I think it's really difficult to do. So
yeah, I mean, I agree. because it's just like, I think conversation too. Like a lot of people are just like, they're just very like they're very passive aggressive. They're just very just like, they don't communicate well. Like they don't say, this is how I feel
Mm-hmm.
and this is why I feel this way. Like, you know what I mean?
For sure.
People don't do that. Like they're just like, oh, like this is I'm so angry, and then they just shut down, and then
Yeah.
they're just, and then I'm just like, okay, like, and that's how fight starts, and they're just like, okay, like why are you feeling this way, like, and then they blame it on the someone, and then they just forget about it and just bury it under,
Yeah.
and it's comes up again. So I think conversation.
Yeah.
So
I'm very guilty. Like I can be guilty of what you're saying, Paul. Where like, if I'm feeling bad about something, rather than like saying, "Hey, I'm not in the best mood right now," or like removing myself, I can make like a snippy, sarcastic comment, and then I have to backtrack and like, and I also then will sometimes start being like defensive about it. We're like, I didn't really mean that, but I'm starting to like have to realize like that's not. It maybe just be upfront right away if you're feeling a little bit off or out of it, and like have that conversation, like you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, also like people need to realize that feelings are not facts. Like, you know what I mean? Feelings change all the time, so it's not a fact. So when you tell someone you're feeling, that's the moment that they feel right now. But it's not permanent. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that feelings are not facts. So
I think that's important. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's good to remember.
Good. Yeah,
just notice that things are going to change, right? Like you're going to have a bad day, and just like if the person who you tell you're having a bad day understands that, then like you can just kind of relax and get it out of the way. But if they don't, then it gets to the point where they start to take it as like, whoa, why are you having a bad day? What's the issue here? Is it my bad? Like, and then it starts to become you start to be like, no, like I'm not blaming you. Like, this is not on you. This is just me. And it just becomes a whole like victim versus non-victim mentality of like exactly
I think
who it is.
Victim mentality, yeah.
And along those lines, like you have to trust your partner, give them the credit that like if you say these things that they will be supportive and be able to like listen and understand. And sometimes I think it's difficult to feel that confidence to be like, this is how I'm feeling. And especially for someone, I think like I have a bit of like a codependent tendency where I'm like, I need affirmation from my partners. And so like to open up and be like, hey, I'm not doing great. Are you still like, are we still cool? Like whatever, like I don't always say that. And then it turns into like, me sort of like hiding some of that a little bit, and it doesn't, and I need to like, I think it's really important to find that trust in them that like they are able to understand and like listen and be supportive. But like, it's difficult to talk about mental health in the first place. So I think that's a really hard place to get to sometimes as well.
Totally. Absolutely. I would agree. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I don't have the long relationships to really tell you, but it definitely has affected my short-term relationships pretty extensively. I'm someone who doesn't communicate well.
No?
No. I do this thing where I tend to just literally think to myself and then slowly convince myself that no matter how much I like the person in front of me, sooner or later, I'm not going to care about them and I'm just going to end it. So what's the point of starting the relationship? It is dark, and I hate this thought process for me. And it's been a problem. It's obviously been a problem. But I just like, for me, I just always feel like my mental health kind of says, wait a second, like you don't want to jump into this really quick, because in 2 years when it's over, you're just going to have wasted 2 years of your life, which isn't the case. I don't believe that a relationship that ends, I used to say, if you're dating someone that you don't plan on marrying, it's useless. I've changed my mind. I have. I now think that there are extreme benefits to having just someone who cares about you the way that a significant other or someone cares about you like that. Yeah. I still have yet to find someone, or at least I think I've yet to find someone. Maybe I just haven't had enough conversations with them yet,
Whoa! I'm interested in diving deeper into that. But anyway, sorry, continue.
You love to live your nomadic lifestyle too, so I think
That's
it
another thing.
benefits you not to.
I'm nervous. I'm also going to leave. Like, I'm always, especially if I'm in Buffalo. I'm like, there's like for me, there's always no chance in my mind I stay here for an extended period of time, even though I literally have spent
still there.
I've spent 24 years of my 26 years on Earth living in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Which, like, another thing that I've grown to like a little bit more than I did coming out of high school and stuff. And I don't love it.
No, but you're content.
Winter,
it's not permanent.
Winter sucks. Winter sucks. But it is a good place. It is a great place otherwise. Yeah. But overall, it's just like, for me, mental health has kind of been the thing that keeps me out of relationships, whereas for you, it's been kind of the thing that's kind of affected them after a year or so, I would say.
Yeah, and I think I've thankfully, I do want to give a shout out to some of my recent partners who have been very forward about mental health, and they've been even though it didn't work out, they've been some of the people that have pushed me to go back to therapy and to try these things. And so I would be remiss if I didn't give them some of the credit. But during the relationship, it's a struggle because they're telling me these things in so many words. And sometimes I'm reluctant to be like, I'm not the issue. It's not me. We don't have enough in common, or we don't relate in the same way. And so I think it's a process, and you need to kind of leave some of that pride at the door too, and recognize that we all have these issues, and maybe they're trying to tell you something that isn't meant to be hurtful. It's just meant to be like, hey, you're not emotionally connected. What's happening? So yeah, I want to give a shout out to them for helping me figure that out too. And I've been lucky enough to find supportive partners, and doesn't mean that it's going to work out, but there are benefits of that, and I do appreciate that process. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a solution because I'm yet to be fully successful. So if I, in 10 years am successfully and happily married, I can maybe come back and
we're
talk about
doing
how I figured it out.
Hopefully we're still doing Sharin Stories in 10 years. That would be great. But on that, letting everybody know that we don't have full solutions just yet, but that's the whole point. We're all gaining. We are going to have to.
What you guys are doing.
Exactly. I think so. And we're going to have to cut off this week's episode now. So first off, thank you, Tim, so much for coming on. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I know I do like to talk a lot, so thanks. Maybe it ran a bit long, but I do appreciate the feedback and the questions and everything, and I really am happy to be a part of this. I think it's really
anything you want to plug.
I want to know Tim's. I want to know Tim's favorite rock.
Oh. Okay,
I'm serious. I'm being dead
the
ass.
stone beryl. It's Beryl, and it's shaped like the old Roman columns. So anywhere that it breaks, it's kind of got that column figure. In the the Natural History Museum in New York City, there's a huge gem and stone room, and they've got some. I've spent hours.
They got some badass. They got some badass barrel.
As a very cool guy, I've spent hours in just the gem room of the History Museum looking at rocks.
Super cool.
A super cool normal.
I like rocks.
You gotta start the Cool Rocks podcast.
True.
But yeah, everybody go check out that wing of the museum in New York City.
Big ups to that wing. Rocks everywhere on the beaches. If you're on a canoe trip, take a look at the rocks and enjoy that water flowing around you.
A hardcore rock plug, probably one of the biggest ones ever. I'm gonna plug The Rock as well because he's an amazing dude.
I am on Instagram, I guess. Don't follow me on Twitter because I'm trying to get off Twitter and I don't want any encouragement to stick around there. So,
don't at me.
I don't want to keep going back to Twitter. I need to just stop checking it.
Twitter's
Instagram,
bad
I enjoy and I am on there. So
yeah, but what's your Instagram handle?
I am Tamish. Yeah.
He is.
You can search my name, Tim Pryshlak, and it will come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So awesome, everybody. If you're watching this, thank you for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe at the bottom. Follow us at Sharin Stories as well. And end it with a strong love you, Tim. Love you very
too,
much.
Bro. Yeah.
Thank you very much again.
Hope to see you soon.
I will.
Thanks,
Any
guys.
brother
Thank
of
you.
Tim's is a brother of mine.
So,
Okay, well,
any
this
brother
is
of
my first
Tim's or any
sister.
brother of me? Any brother of me or any of Tim's?
I already usurped you in the importance here.
Shit.
You weren't a brother
This
until
is number
I
one
came
brother.
on the show, and now you're a brother. Now we're all brothers.
This is that extra content that people